America, planet Earth. What's good? This your boy Codell. Hey, today I honestly feel like this is one of the most important episodes I got, and I'm very excited for today's episode. We have Mark Ludwig back on the show. Mark, how are you doing, man? Good to have you back.
Doing great. Hey, thanks for having me on again. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. You are definitely shaking things up in DC. And we have a lot of exciting information that the people are, I think, anxious to hear about. So let's get into it. I've got some questions for you, and I'm going to pull them up real quick. Okay. So, Mark, I'm going to kind of take it back first to kind of, for those who don't know who you are, give you a chance to give a little bit of your backstory. That way they can connect with you a little bit. So, you spent 204 days separated from your son before discovering a brain growth through an MRI that doctors attributed to the stress of family court proceedings. Now, can you describe the moment you realized your personal trauma was actually a systematic problem affecting hundreds of thousands of families, and what changed and how you understood your own suffering?
Yeah, I had been involved in the political arena for 30 years up to that point. I had been a candidate for U.S. Congress and very fortunate to have spent 20 years with Phyllis Schlafly, who's considered one of, if not the most influential female in political history. And I had no idea she was in my own backyard. I saw her on a regular basis at all the meetings around St. Louis and got good time with her. Spent a lot of good time with Morton Blackwell, the founder of Leadership Institute. When I ran for U.S. Congress, I got a lot of good quality time with Kellyanne Conway. Although when I knew her, she was Kellyanne Fitzpatrick. And so I had been planning a launch. My goal had always been to be president of the United States ever since I was 6 years old. So I was president of my class. I was, Mr. Eager Beaver, president of every club organization I've ever been in college and after college. And then was getting ready to launch a really serious charge at laying the foundation to run for governor of Missouri by becoming the youngest speaker of the House, because we have term limits in
Right.
Missouri. So everything is all laid out. Everything's on the go. We're getting ready to hit the launch button. 3 years of planning in the works. And my son's
So
mother is,
basically, what you're saying is everything that has led up to where you are now and where you're going goes back to, what you've experienced, your own
yeah.
experience
So,
dealing with the
so
family
everything right as we're
courts.
getting ready to hit the launch button. We were dating at the time. She gets pregnant and, won't go into all the details, but there was some concerns about paternity that I had, and
Right.
which I think were more than justified. And when I told her that I wanted a DNA test, I think she was a little afraid of what the results could be. So yeah, she left, and took me 204 days to get access to my son. And
Right.
for a while, I went through like a state of depression for a couple of years because I think everybody goes through this early on, not as much now, but 15 years ago, social media wasn't, even though it was big, it's not the way it is now. So I
No,
didn't come
no.
across, I finally came across the father's rights movement page 4 years into it. But before that, I thought I was all alone. I thought, and I was embarrassed to tell people my situation because, the standard, hey, you're a man, suck it up. Too bad.
Right. Well,
And
I think it's really cool because even though we're not quite in the mainstream conscious yet, we're definitely starting to knock on the door. And so we've made so much noticeable progress on so many levels. And to me, it's without a doubt the future is bright. And I like where everything's heading. And even though, again, we got a lot of stuff we still got to achieve, I think we're going to get there.
yeah,
So, and
we
you're
definitely,
definitely part
because
of
like I
that.
said, I remember the first day I came across that father's rights movement page. Now, when I came across it, if I remember correctly, we had about 17,000 people at that point. And
Right.
I remember thinking, holy cow, 17,000 people that have been affected by this. And right about that time, one of my best friends, Senator Jim Lemke, gave me a call and he said, "Hey, Mark, there's some people that are wanting to push a equal shared parenting bill in Missouri. And, you're our guy. I want to get your input on it." So
Right.
we, gotten together with a few members of the Senate, and I'd been pretty well known in Missouri. I'd served on a lot of board of directors for foster kids and special needs kids, and vice president of the Chamber of Commerce. I was fairly well known. So a couple of TV stations did a feature on me that went viral. And I started getting, I'm not kidding, there were days I'd get 30, 40, 50 messages a day from people.
What year was this?
That was 11 years ago.
Wow, okay, yeah, so this was still in the early stages of social media. I mean, it was definitely big and around, but it was when it was just going mainstream. Okay, so let me ask you this, Mark. So this is what I think. I think most Americans have never heard of Title 4D, yet you've identified it as the hidden financial architecture driving custody outcomes that don't serve children's best interests. So, can you walk us through specifically how those federal reimbursement incentives and child support collection metrics create pressure on states to favor sole custody arrangements over equal shared parenting?
Yeah, that's the ironic thing is back in the 90s, Phyllis Schlafly started sounding the alarm that Title 4D was going to create a fatherless society. But if you don't have a child, it zoomed right. Like I said, for 20 years, I had access to her, didn't even register with me what she had been talking about. I listened to all her other issues, but when she would start talking about Title 40, I would tune out. I'm like, I don't know what that is. I don't even need to worry about that. But I still remember years ago, several of my mentors told me if you're having a hard time getting legislation passed, follow the money trail. There's a money trail somewhere that's creating the problem.
Always
So
follow the money.
yeah, I had a buddy of mine, Paul Kurtman, was the chair of the Missouri House Ways and Means Committee, and he was like, "Mark, this deals with Title 4D at the federal level. There's some problems there." And he's like, "That's what Phyllis Schlafly used to talk about." And I'm like, "You're kidding!" I started doing some research into it, and basically the simple, and it's a very confusing system. So to try and, there I say, in when you're doing interviews, talk at the third grade level, which is good
Right.
because that's about the level that I talk at anyway. But
Right, right. Same here. I try to sound smarter than I am when I'm on the podcast, but hey, I'm just a regular dude. So, yeah.
But yeah, so the simple version is in 1975, the government came up with a program that was well intentioned. The thing is, they were paying out money in back then it wasn't called TANF, it was Aid to Women and Dependent Children. So they were paying out welfare benefits because back when I was growing up in the Beaver Cleaver days, my dad was a chemical engineer, my mom was a stay at home mom. So 12 years into the marriage, if they had gotten a divorce, it would have been very hard for my mom to enter the workforce with kids graduating from college that knew how to use computers and knew how to use spreadsheets and everything. She would have been relegated to a minimum wage, if even that. And so until she got her feet on the ground, if the father wouldn't have been paying child support, and I'll fight just as hard for a mother as I will for a father. So I'm not, every once in a while I get women that try to think I'm invalidating. I am not in any way invalidating, but the
Well, let
fact
me say
remains
this
that
real
in the
quick, Mark.
70s, it was men that were affected by this because in the 70s,
Exactly.
95%, more than 95% of the payers were males. So I'm telling what the program was designed. So the program was designed to say, hey, if we're paying welfare benefits out because someone is intentionally avoiding child support, we're going to go back to recoup these welfare benefits so that people don't think, well, I don't need to pay child support. Government's going to take care of it. So they set up a means tested program. The Social Security Act is a welfare program. Now, let me clarify, those funds don't come from the Social Security pool. Every once in a while, people out there in social media say, if you pay Social Security tax, your taxes are going for Title 4D. No, they're not. Totally different pool of money. But it is
So
the
how's
Social
this work?
Security Act, which is a welfare program, which means if you're a middle class person, you should not be a part of the Title 40 program. Any other welfare program, there's an application form to fill out to determine a needs basis, except Title 4D. Because in 1996 and 1998, there were two changes that were snuck in there and basically threw 19 million child support orders into the Title 4D program. So now you've got all kinds of orders that don't need to be there. Now, we'll talk in a second about what are the components of Title 4D, but let me talk more importantly about this problem of throwing the middle class families in there. If
Okay.
I'm a child support enforcement worker and my boss gives me two files on my desk, one is a means tested program that the program was designed for, The other is a middle class. Well, the means tested person, chances are they're very low income. Their child support amount is very low. They've probably changed jobs 3 or 4 times, apartments 3 or 4 times. Even if I track them down, they probably don't have a savings account. That's why they're not paying child support. That's if they're not dead beats, they're dead broke. So if
Yeah,
I
they just
track
don't
them
have the
down, I don't
means.
get any money. I don't look like I've done any work. But here's this middle class file over here. Computer programmer, you know, plumber, electrician. They probably worked at the same place. Their child support amount's probably 800 a month or more. So I look like a rock star if I focus on this file instead of 8 of these files over here. So what's happened is they're not even looking at the means tested. Matter of fact, Leslie Fry, when she was the head of the Child Support Enforcement Commission for the state of California, is on
Hmm.
record testifying in front of Congress that she learned early on the way to maximize the Title 40 incentive money was to forget about the means tested people and go after the middle class, which is exactly what's being done. Now, there's two
Right.
components to the Title 4D program, and I apologize if some of you guys are watching this are probably just totally bored beyond measure now, thinking,
No,
oh
no,
my gosh, this guy's
Mark,
boring.
you are absolutely cooking right now. So trust me, the people are loving this. You are on fire.
All
Keep
right, because like I
going,
said, I
please.
unfortunately I get geeked out on this stuff, but I know there's some people are like, this guy's the most boring person I've ever heard.
Yeah, but all the people listening to this show, this is what we are thirsty for. This is the information that we want. So, yeah, no,
Okay,
you're
well I'll keep
cooking,
going,
Mark.
and
Keep it
if
coming.
if I get boring, just hook me off the stage. But two
No,
two
no,
main
no.
components
Trust me. I'll interrupt when it's time to move on to the next question. So,
But two main components. There's a reimbursement that says the federal government will reimburse the states 2/3 of every dollar for every dollar they spend on child support collections. Now, that's not 2/3 of every dollar for every dollar they collect. We get every once in a while these yahoos on social media. They're like, if you pay $1,000 in child support, your state's making $600. No, 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 no. The money you pay in child support goes to the other parent. That incentive money is based on the employees that they hire to what they claim track money down. But anybody who's ever audited the government before knows
wait,
government
wait,
is
wait,
no.
Mark. Let me go back a second. So, because this is something that I didn't understand. I know that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that they're getting about 66 cents for every dollar of child support. So they're getting that money through, they're incentivizing it by hiring more staff, is essentially what you're
Well, they get
saying?
no, the staff they hire, the federal government pays 2/3 of their salary. They get nothing out of
Okay.
child support itself. The child support goes
Right.
directly to the other parent. So if they
Right.
collect $1,000 worth of child support, that means nothing at all. But
Right.
the worker they have to hire at the state level, the state can hire an employee at 33 cents on the dollar. So if I'm a manager of a department and I figure, you know what, I only got to pay 33 cents out of my budget, the federal government's going to and I give the example. Imagine if you were going to open a restaurant, because the first year you open a restaurant, the owner doesn't take a profit. They have to pay salaries to employees in order to get them to keep showing up. So imagine that you've budgeted 10,000 a year for 3 employees at your restaurant.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, your rich uncle comes to town and says, hey, you know what? I want to help you get started. So for every employee you hire, I'll pay for 2 more. Are you going to fire 2 of the 3 employees? No, you're going to hire more employees because your uncle's paying for 2/3 of them. You look like a rock star now because you got so many
Right.
employees working. The challenge is now at the government level, you got 9 employees. You better justify their income, or more importantly, they need to justify their own. So if they need to garnish a wage and they spend an hour, Google searching and finding out where somebody works to place a garnishment, it's amazing how on the report that was 8 hours worth of work that they did. Or if they have to
So
send a letter out, instead of 15 minutes to write the letter, it was 3 hours writing a letter. And so
So
the
that's
government
where the
bloat.
incentive comes in. It motivates the employees to basically go out and shake down everybody they can for money to justify the budget that they got coming in from Title 40. Am I correct
Exactly.
in essentially
Yeah.
saying
So
that?
they bloat their
Okay.
budgets.
Okay.
Now, the other
Perfect.
part comes in is the incentive pool. And this is where the big problem is. $700 million is thrown into a pot every year for the states to fight over. And there's 5 things that they're ranked on. One is paternity establishments, one is the number of orders, one is the total collections, one is the efficiency ratio that they have, and the other is arrearages. Now, the challenge I have with each of those, number one, paternity establishments. They don't say the correct paternity. All somebody has to do is put down a person. Well, of
Right.
contested, now not all paternity, every once in a while I get people, they say 24% of all DNA tests come up, negative. That's not true. What happens is, of the highly contested ones, in some states it's as high as 24%. But there is a lot of, as most people know, paternity fraud. Well, before someone is allowed to put someone down on a welfare program as being responsible for child support, they darn well should be getting a DNA test to prove they got the right person. And the reason for that is something known as
Uh,
the Bradley Amendment. The Bradley Amendment says that you cannot ever put arrearages away. So, because what was happening is, people were racking up child support arrearages, and their attitude is, I'll just go to bankruptcy court and wipe it
Wait,
out. No
okay,
biggie.
I'm gonna sound like a dummy, but what are arrearages?
But yeah, the back child support. So if somebody falls behind
Okay, okay,
and they start
okay,
falling behind, it
gotcha.
becomes a downward spiral. But there were a lot of people in the 90s that were, especially, that were figured out, hey, you know what? I just won't pay child support and I'll just declare bankruptcy. They can't get me. So they set up the
Okay,
Bradley Amendment, which again had great intent that, hey, the true deadbeats, not the people that are, most people in the shared parenting community aren't deadbeats. They're
yep,
wanting access to their kids, but there's some who literally do walk away and then they just figure, you know what, I'm not going to help out at all. So they set
right,
up the Bradley Amendment that says, hey, you can't wipe it out. You can't discharge it in bankruptcy. It'll never go away. And a judge can't wipe it away. So you can't go to the judge with your sob story. Now, that's the problem I have. Even though normally I do not like judicial discretion, let me give a big disclaimer. I'm not a huge fan of judicial discretion. However,
neither am I.
with the Bradley Amendment, there should be some discretion because right now, during COVID, how many people lost their job because their company went out of business? And they didn't know that they had to file a modification. Well, meanwhile, they're racking up arrearages. They go before a judge with 6 months of arrearages, and the judge says, hey, I'm sorry, but because of the Bradley Amendment, I can't wipe these arrearages away. And not only that, in your state, you're getting 10% interest tacked on to these arrearages. And what about
Jeez,
paternity fraud cases? There are over 2,000 fathers in jail tonight for back child support for a child that's been proven it's not even their child. But because of the
right.
Bradley Amendment, a judge can't wipe that away. So that's one big fix we need at the federal level, that we got to give some more discretion to judges for some cases. Okay, so that was the
Okay,
first one.
okay. So let me ask you this. You've obviously, I'm assuming that you've been communicating the same information that you're sharing to all these people in DC that you've been dealing with. So what's been the response?
Yeah, the Bradley Amendment, we're getting great bipartisan support for. Very, very big
Okay,
bipartisan support. They do want to make sure that it's not, especially the Democrats want to make sure that they can't just wipe it away. So we've got to have some kind of safeguards, that the presumption should be that you can't wipe it away. However, it's a rebuttable presumption that a judge will have discretion if there's a case with some determining factors. Just like with our 50-50 bills, we have determining factors to look at. So, did the person lose their job through no fault of their own? Was there an economic situation? Was there, did they have a medical situation? They were in the hospital for 3 months. No wonder they fell. Did they go to jail for something different? You can't earn an income while you're in jail, so you're going to be falling behind. So we're going to
so
have some
this will
determining
help.
factors with this.
Yeah, so this will help basically stop all this penalizing that's going on of these dads that are supposed deadbeats, but they're really just, maybe at a hard point in their life, at a tough time in their life. So it'll stop them
Yeah,
from
that'll
getting
that'll
railroaded.
definitely curb. Won't stop it, but it'll definitely curb it quite a bit. So that's one of
Okay,
the like I said. There's 5 mechanisms. One is paternity establishments, which ties into the
right.
arrearages. I'll say arrearages is the second one. And the challenge with arrearages right now, the federal government has $115 million, or I'm sorry, $1 billion, billion with a B,
That sounds
$115
more like
billion
it.
dollars of child support arrearages. Now,
Wow.
the overwhelming majority of those are uncollectible. I forget what the exact percentage is, but I think it's something close to 90% of those arrearages are people making less than 20,000 a year income. So they,
Yeah,
like I said,
they're
they're
not
not
getting
dead
that
beat,
money
they're dead
back.
broke. They
Right.
cannot pay it. And excuse me. Oh wow, I just burped. Sorry about that. Woo. So, anyways,
Perfect.
it's a man show. It's deer season. But anyways, uh, George Peace with NPO, who I think is a way better policy expert than me. He's just a G. I love spending time with him. But he talks about the fact that imagine if you have a business that you run, that you have 115 billion of uncollectible when you're only having 30 billion of collections every year. You would get fired if you were the collection person for that company. Fired in a
Right.
heartbeat. So
Yeah.
obviously that says that there's a problem here. The problem isn't, that we need more people trying to collect. The problem is these child support amounts are unsustainable. So on
Yep.
that, we're working on right size orders, trying to make sure that can we have a minimum, most child support orders are correct because they try to leave it up to the states because they don't want to infringe on the states' rights. So they give basically a general direction and say, do whatever you want. And almost every
Yeah.
state says, well, we're going to or impute child support on gross income. Well, I don't know about you, but I live on net income. I don't live on gross income. So
Right.
if they
Yeah.
say child support in some states is going to be 35% of your gross income, well, that's actually half of your net income, which means you're
Yeah.
spending half of your income for one child, and the other half of your income, you got to pay your mortgage payment, your car payment, your gas, your electric, your groceries, everything else that goes on in your life. So
Right.
we need to have some basic, a basic standard of living threshold that we allow the payors to have that say, hey, we're going to work with you here. We're not going to drive you into debt. So that's the second one.
Yeah.
Fraternity establishments, arrearages. Third one is number of orders. And this is the bad one.
Okay.
Well, a bad one. They're all bad. But the reason is, and we'll talk about in a second where the money goes, because the money goes directly to the courthouses making the decisions. Well, the easiest one for them to do is number of orders. So what that gives an incentive is any case that comes before a judge, they're going to assign them a child support order. So even if a couple comes to a judge and says, hey, we're not worried about child support, but we just can't agree on a schedule. He wants
Right.
50-50. I think it should be 35% time. The judge in almost every one of those cases is going to say, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to split down the middle 43%. And however, you're going to have a child support amount. Or they both come close to 50. The judge is going to say, you know what? I'm going to give you 50-50. However, you're going to pay child support. So now we have an order. And so they get
Right.
one more notch on their belt. So
Yeah.
there's an incentive to force a child support order on a couple, whether they want that child support order or not. And what that does, that takes the focus, which the whole program does, off of the true best interest of the child, even though I hate that term, but off the true focus on the child. And it focuses on, let's get another order in. And
Well,
then
I
the
know
next one is,
exactly. Mark, sorry to interrupt, but what you said a moment ago about what it encourages. I've talked to several outstanding mothers that, don't try to take advantage of the court, where I've been told the same story where the attorneys come to them and try to encourage them to go after as much child support. They even encourage them to throw false accusations. And I've talked to several moms that have told me this. And so, yeah, it's pretty crazy, but I'm sorry to interrupt. Please keep going
yeah,
on.
well, I talked to one of the best known attorneys in the country off the
Yeah.
record. I won't say his name, but he's pretty well known. And we were talking about my case, and he was telling me just because my ex has a lot of connections. She's worth quite a bit of money, and
Okay.
he was telling me the situation. But he said, Mark, there's almost no doubt in my mind it would take at least a year and possibly two, three, $400,000. But I'm pretty sure we'd get you 50-50. But he said the trade-off is the wink, wink, nod, nod to the judge in the chambers. We'll agree to pay more child support if you give us 50-50. And I'm like, let me get this straight. So I go from having my child 4 overnights a month to 15 overnights a month, but I'm sending more money to the other house, which is $1 million home right now. I mean, my condo that I live in, this is no exaggeration, my mortgage payment, matter of fact, hold on here, I'll show, hold on, Cordell, you get the
Okay.
real deal here.
Hold up, guys. He's about to break down some numbers.
This is my mortgage
Show
payment.
us.
True story. 473.08 is what I pay in a mortgage for my condo. Now, I don't know
Okay.
what most people pay for housing across the country, but I would wager to say that if you picture what the average person in the country pays for rent, imagine what I live in at $438 or 473.08 a month. Okay.
Yeah.
So why does even more of my money need to go to somebody living in $1 million house when I'm incurring 4 times the expenses while he's here? But that
Yep.
happens. Um,
Yeah.
and then the fifth one is the efficiency ratio. And this is the one
Okay.
that they really spin. What they make the claim is for every dollar we spend on Title 4D, we collect $5.63 in child support. And what they're claiming is because the Title 4D system is a $7 billion program.
Wait. Okay. So they collect $5.64. I've never heard this before. The only information I've ever been able to find is the 66 cents to every dollar. So
Yeah,
explain this
what they're
more.
claiming is that there's over a $5 ratio of collections for every dollar they spend in support efforts or enforcement
Okay.
efforts. So
Okay.
the program, the last one that they ran, it was like a $6 billion, and they had collected $32 billion worth of child support. So what they're claiming is this is the most efficient piece of government work you've ever seen because we're getting a return on investment of over 5 to 1. My contention is you didn't need to spend that $6 billion because the overwhelming child support payers would have paid their child support without having to run it through your 40 system. My
Right.
mortgage company doesn't need the government to collect my mortgage payment. I get a statement, I pay it. My car loan, they don't need the government to collect my money. I pay it. They can send me a bill, I pay it. The overwhelming 80% of that 30 billion that they collect in child support would have been paid without them. So it's not
Right.
a $5 to 1 ratio. And the other problem I have with that is why are we so hyper focused on dollars instead of what quality kids are we raising?
Right.
So that should be a couple things that we're working on. I don't want to reveal too many details. That's why we never introduce a bill. I always tell people, even at the state level, you never introduce a bill first. The reason being that lets the opposition know your game plan. And unfortunately for us, our opposition is the Bar Association and the radical DV groups that
Right.
have one heck of a lot more knowledge. If people think I know a lot, imagine 10,000 of me's spread out all across the country that every
Right.
morning wake up and look on Legiscan for a bill to see a bill that they want to attack.
Well, let me
Or
say this real quick, Mark. Like what you're saying right now, people, I want you to think about this. And this is what I'm always trying to say on the show is they they're not only well organized, they've been well organized and well funded for decades. So we
exactly.
are in a position where we're catching up right now. But the only way we can catch up is we have to work with the same level of determination
Yes.
and organization
And
and
beat them at their own game.
infrastructure.
We've got to use their strategy. The
Right.
Violence Against Women's Act, which was Biden's claim to fame, and I'm not putting Biden down, but that was his claim to fame. And they should have named it the
I'll put Biden
Create a
down.
False Allegation to Believe Any Accuser bill, because that's basically
Right.
what it is. Hidden in there is the Cadence law and everything like that. Now, even though I hate the Violence Against Women's Act, they were geniuses on their strategy.
Right.
4 years, they had over 1,000 of the highest paid attorneys and lobbyists in the country that had been getting together almost like the terrorist or the ISIS in the little cells. And nobody knew
Yes.
who was doing what. They had no bill. If people were like, do you have a bill? Oh, we don't have a bill. And, who's writing it? Oh, we don't know who's writing it. So for 3 or 4 years, nobody knows who's behind this thing. Nobody sees verbiage. Nobody sees anything. But behind the scenes, they had been meeting at the White House. They'd been meeting with HHS, then meeting with members of Congress. The Speaker of the House already knew this bill was coming and knew to fast track it to a committee. They met with the committee members behind the scenes. They all knew it was coming. the floor. They already knew what the vote count was going to be. And then at the last second, just like if you remember the famous Nancy Pelosi, we have to pass the bill so we can see what's in it.
Right. Are you talking about with the Obamacare?
Yeah, that was the
Yeah, yeah.
strategy with Violence Against Women's Act. They drop a 1,700-page bill that nobody has time to read, nobody has time to fight, and all of a sudden it becomes law, and people are like, "What just happened?" And
Yeah.
unfortunately, in the shared parenting community, we get people that don't have a political background. And in
Right.
11 years, I can't tell you how many thousands of people have come to me and said, "I want to write a bill and introduce it." That's the last thing you want to do, because the opposition now gets our game plan and they will destroy us. All they have to do now is take our bill and go to their connections where they've been going to backyard picnics to these people and donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to their PAC. And they say, "I don't like this bill because of this, 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 and this. I need you to kill the bill." Who do you think they're going to listen to? A bunch of ragtag grassroots people, or the people that have given them hundreds of thousands of dollars to their PAC that they've known for decades?
Well, and the problem is, again, kind of going back to everything we've been talking about, but the problem isn't that it's grassroots. The problem is that the grassroots isn't organized,
Well,
and
and that's
it
the
is
second thing I'll get to. So the
yeah,
strategy that I'm trying to implement at the federal level, and I think we're getting people buying into in the past, we get everybody wants to do their own thing. They want to get a
right,
statue named.
right,
My attitude is, guys, come on. The name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name of the back. And I'm
right,
equal in this too. I started that new organization, National Council for Equal Shared Parenting, that launched, last week. But my organization isn't equal. This isn't the National Council for Equal Shared Parenting Project or the Mark Ludwig Project. No, 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 no. Every organization's equal. NPO isn't equal in this. We're all equal. But a couple things we're
right.
doing. Number one is strategy wise, there's no bill. Nobody sees a bill. We don't want them to know. Now we're going to have policy papers, which is what they did with VAWA. But two things we do. Number one, you start with HHS. Every member of Congress, because the Title 4D is a program under the Department of Health and Human Services, which is HHS. So if I'm a member of Congress, the first thing I always say is, well, this falls under the Department of HHS. What do they think about this? Because if they don't like it, you're screwed. You're out. You're dead on arrival. So wouldn't it
Yeah,
make sense, before you go to a member of Congress, let's go to HHS and say, "Hey, we'd like your input on this. We'd like you to help us craft the bill." Because I don't know about you, but any basic sales 101, if you try and sell something to somebody, they're going to push back. But if you make them think it was their idea and they help craft it, they're selling themselves. So
right,
if you go to HHS and say, "Hey, we'd like some help crafting something," and now they feel like they've helped write it. Now, when a member of Congress calls them, they're like, "Heck yeah, I helped write that. I need some help pushing that." Then you go to the
stroke
White
of the
House.
ego. No, just stroke of the ego is what you're doing, and that, I mean, it sounds
Well,
really
the big
simple.
reason is they've got, just like anything else, you're invested in it. No
Right.
different than when I was a kid or a teenager. When my dad started making me pay for my insurance and the tires and the gas, instead of driving all over town for hours, I started only driving where I had to go. And I shouldn't say this publicly, but I stopped giving lawn jobs and doing spin outs and everything like that because I was paying for the tires. And why? Because I had investment. I was invested in this. So that's the same philosophy. HHS, they've put time, effort, and energy into helping to write it. So they're invested in this now. That's their time they put into this. So you're not even in a phony way stroking their ego. They're very genuine. Like, I put time into this. I want this to pass now. So the
Yeah,
second thing
no,
you
I
do
agree.
then is you go to the White House, the administration, because there's aspects that we can do through executive order. So if you get the White House buying into it, same thing. They're going to help push it with at least their half of the aisle. So step
Okay.
number 1 and 2 is HHS and the White House. That doesn't mean you leave the Hill out. In the short term, the
Now,
strategy use
hold up,
is,
Mark.
yeah,
I mean, with the White House. I mean, again, I ask you this all the time, but how's that going? Because that's obviously something people want to know. Because you're constantly there in DC. And as far as the White House, who has been, if you can tell me, who has been helpful, who has helped you in getting into the ears of the White House?
well, I think I've got 13 friends now in the administration. Several
Okay.
of them literally right there. I think everybody knows my friend Will Scharf. that the assistant to the president, he's the guy that's slightly balding, that every executive order, he's the one standing next to the president with the black binder that says, Mr. President,
Okay,
this
yeah,
is the
yeah,
executive order to release the Kennedy files. That's my friend Will
yeah,
Shark. Will is one of
okay,
them that he follows my page, so you'll see him every once in a while. He loves Levi, and we've
okay,
known each other for years. But he was the one who helped me get Levi to the president's house in Bedminster last year during the campaign. So Levi got a
excellent.
chance to. It's funny though. Levi is totally unfazed by politics. So Trump is standing 20 feet from him, and he's sitting on a little white chair outside the Bedminster house playing video games, completely unfazed that he's standing
Right.
next to some guy that, whether you love him or hate him, I mean, even if it was Biden, I don't like
He's
Biden's policies,
polarizing.
but if I
Yeah,
had a chance to meet Biden, oh my gosh, yes. As a
yeah,
history buff,
right.
heck yeah,
Yeah, no,
I would
I'm
love
with
to meet
you.
him.
Yeah,
But
I'm
not
with you.
Levi. Levi's totally unfazed. It's the funniest thing. But yeah, Will and Ed Martin are the two that got me that invitation to go to the Bedminster House. But so Ed, Will's right there with the president. Literally, he's the legislative assistant to the president. So he
So
spends
can
at
I
least 8 to 12 hours a day with him. Ed
I don't know if this
Martin, a
is
lot of
some
people know, Ed is the one who Phyllis Schlafly designated to take over her legacy for the Phyllis Schlafly Eagle Council. Even though she had 6 kids of her own, she picked Ed over her own kids to say, this is the guy. This is the guy I want to
what
take over my.
I know Ed Martin, but what's his role again? What is his role within the White House? What's
He's
he
now the head of the Department of Weaponization. It's a new
Okay.
thing that Trump created. So he reports directly to President Trump and to Pam
Okay.
Bondi. And they
Okay.
have meetings literally once a week between the three of them. So
So let me
Ed's
ask you
pretty.
this.
Go ahead.
I mean, I don't even know if you even know or you can even answer this, but is there maybe any executive orders or anything that you know of coming down the pipeline that's related to addressing
That's what we've
Title
been working on.
4D?
I've had 2 meetings at the White House so far. I'll be going back hopefully before New Year's. I'll definitely be
Okay.
going back in January and February again. Couple challenge is right now, even if whether people love Trump or hate him, both of the sides of the aisle admit that if anybody was going to do a radical change, this is the guy. I mean,
I
most
right.
on both sides
Yeah.
of the aisle, every other
Yeah.
president in history loves the status quo and the bureaucracy. Trump's the only guy that has the kahunas to say, nah, this needs to be changed. We're doing this right now.
Right.
So, unfortunately, that means 80,000 people are coming to the White House on a regular basis with this issue and this issue and this issue because they realize we got 3 years to try and get this guy to hurry do something. So, we're
Right.
on their radar. It's going to
Yeah.
be a process, though. And that's why the
Yeah.
relationships are so important. That's why I tell people every once in a while, people think it's so important to have a home run during one meeting.
Well,
Basic
can
Sales
I can
101 will tell you most sales are done after a seventh connection with a client. So
Right.
I want the
Well, I
relationship.
wanna speculate a little bit right here, okay? This is why I think you're going to be successful with this, and you're probably maybe even more in the ear of the president than maybe even you realize is for the following. 1, Trump himself went through divorce court, so he's had that experience. 2, when you look at everything he's done with addressing, and I know this is dark right here, but with addressing the human trafficking stuff, because when you look at arrests under Trump, the human trafficking arrests are at an all-time high, just like they were under his first administration. So I think for Trump, naturally, anything that is geared towards having a positive impact on families and children, I just think that's a natural way to his heart, and it just naturally grasps his attention. So, yeah, man, I think this is
Yeah,
I
we're
think
we're
you're
in his ear. I mean,
yeah,
it's being talked about at policy meetings. We have ways to go.
yeah.
Realistically, I think it's going to take at minimum 12 more months to get an executive order. I do think we're going to get one. I also
That's
think we're
not
going to get
that
a
long.
it
Right.
really
Okay,
isn't.
so minimum 12 months at the longest, just speculation again, what do you think at the
18 to
longest?
24.
Okay.
Yeah, I
That's
really
still not
believe in
long.
24 months or less, we're going to get some kind of executive order. I think we're
Okay.
also going to get a regulatory change at HHS because there's a lot of things that they have the ability to change. The challenge with that is those are administrative changes, which means if a new administration comes in and they hate Trump, first thing they're going to do is look at what executive orders and what
Right.
regulatory changes were done under that administration. And they're done. So, but that's why I said there's a long term. Some people think I just go to Washington and make a lot of noise. No, you better have a
No.
strategy or you're going to get your butt kicked. And that's
Right.
why, like I said, I'm drawing on. I'm not smart enough to figure this out myself, but I was smart enough to realize, you know what? Phyllis Schlafly did this on several different issues. So if I follow her playbook and I follow what Morton Blackwell says and what Newt Gingrich says and Kellyanne Conway and Ed Martin, and I use their playbook for our issue, we got a much better chance than a bunch of yahoos showing up at the Capitol.
Well, and we have such an advantage over Phyllis Schlafly, and not and what I mean by that is because we live in the age of the internet, so we can get the information out independently versus Phyllis Schlafly. I mean, her different time
Yeah, it
period. She
blows my
had
mind
more of
what
a
she
mountain.
accomplished. I mean, a woman from pretty tiny little woman here from St. Louis putting 25,000 people in an arena to support her issues is
Yeah,
crazy. But
it's
we
crazy.
are making progress. And like I said, so then the ultimate is to back it up with a statute. But, that's not going to happen overnight. I had people, I brought 40 something people with me to DC a week and a half ago. And I had people thinking that somehow a law was going to change. I'm like, two things. Number one, the government shut down. So
Right,
nothing's going to happen during the shutdown. But number two, we got 435 members of the House that hate each other. It's like herding cats. And then we got 100 members of the Senate. This ain't going to be a 1 or 2 year deal. This is a 3 or a 4 year deal, if even that. So the
right.
strategy is we're educating them, we're planting seeds, we're doing what they did with VAWA, finding out who are the key players, who are the key brokers, that if we can get them behind us, that once we get the executive order and we get the regulatory change, we've got the wheels in motion now. So now we put this into the formula and now everything's off and rolling. So I
So let
brought
me
about
ask you
40.
this,
Yeah.
Mark. I think this is important. Who are some, Democrats that are supporting what you're doing?
Well, I don't want to do too many names because unfortunately,
Okay.
like I said, that gives the game plan away for two reasons.
Okay.
Number one, we get some people within our community that want to make a name for themselves. So I
Right.
give out a name and they call them the next day because they want to make sure
But
that
you do have some, but you are getting some good Democrat
yeah,
support,
we've
it
got some
sounds like.
great Democrats. We had some really
I
good
love it.
Democrat meetings this past visit up here. Really, really. So we're getting some good buy-in from both parties.
I
Definitely.
love that.
But the biggest
Excellent.
ingredient, as you said, is now we have to train the advocates. And that's why I do that training class. In the past, our advocates did more harm than good. Not because
Yeah.
they didn't mean well, they meant well. The challenge is there is a distinct culture in Washington, D.C. And if you don't understand how to articulate the message in a way that resonates with a legislator, or you don't understand, the org chart of a, senator's office, and you don't understand that there's a different culture in the Senate in D.C. than there is in the House. So
Well, that's
I
the
did
key
last
word,
time I had,
culture.
I'm sorry?
I was just saying that's the key word, culture. It's like anywhere you go, it's got its own flavor and culture. So when you're
Exactly.
going somewhere else, you have to know how to adjust yourself to operate within that environment. But sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so I did about 12 training meetings with the team. I got this legislative leadership development program that I have. And we did about 12 hour to 2 hour long Zoom meetings before we went to DC. So now it's not, oh, Mark, what do we do? These people already know. They know how to frame the narrative. They know the 6 key points that we're going to talk on. They know how to do that in a 10-minute pitch and a 15-minute pitch. And more importantly, everybody's saying the same thing. Because if I'm a legislative aide, because at the federal level, most legislators don't have time to deal with all 80,000 issues. So they have a chief of staff, policy directors on certain issues. But those policy directors all get together with other staff members. They're all buddies because they work such a wacky schedule. They can't have many friends that don't have that same schedule. So they
Right.
become their own friends. So
Yeah.
what happens is they get together on a Friday night or a Saturday over the weekend, and one of them says, "Oh, this group came into us talking about Title 4D. Oh, there's a group that came into us. Oh, another one came into us. Well, this group was talking about A, B, and C. Our group didn't talk about that. They were talking about Q, R, and S. It just sounds like these people don't know what the hell they're doing. Whereas imagine the difference if they say, hey, our group said this, this, and this. Oh my gosh, that's the exact same thing. This group looks like they're well thought out. They know what they're doing. They've got a game plan. They're orchestrated. And that's why I
Right.
did that reception I did at the Capitol Hill Club. The Capitol Hill Club is considered the Mar-a-Lago of DC. Very, very high
Okay.
membership fee to become a member. So
Yeah.
if you're going to host a reception for members of politics up there, it's going to be at the Capitol Hill Club, which is hard to get. It's a pretty exclusive club. So just by hosting it there, the word goes out. Okay, these guys have their act together. And when they find out I used Ed Martin's membership, that really raises a level of, holy cow, a guy who works directly for the president, he's the one who let you use their membership. Then when you have Congressman Andy Biggs, who flew in from Arizona for it, Congressman Eric Burleson, a friend of mine from Springfield, flew in for that event. Nick Bessick didn't fly in for that. He just happened to be in town, but he's friends with Andy Biggs and Eric. And they were like, hey, a friend of mine, Mark, is launching his new organization. Can you come
Yeah.
over tonight? So he shows up. I had two friends from the White House. I had Tim from Focus on the Family, one of the co-founders of the Museum of the Bible. We had about 10 big influencers from DC.
Okay.
Now the chatter goes around DC to all these, because I had 5 chief of staffers there too. Imagine them going back to work the next day of, hey, these people kind of look like they know what they're doing. Next time they come
Yeah.
into town. So my goal is in February, this time I brought about 40 people. I'm planning on bringing 80 to 100 in February or March. Then I'm going to
Okay.
plan on bringing about 150 to 200 in June and about
Okay.
300 next November, because you have to have scalable
Okay.
growth. You can't have chaos. So I want
Yeah.
to make sure that it's manageable growth. Everybody's on the same page. They're all a part of that legislative leadership development program. They could do it without me. And that my ultimate goal is that, because right now, unfortunately, it's heavily dependent on me, which is
Yeah.
great for your
Right.
ego. Unfortunately, that's a horrible game plan. What we
Right.
need to make sure is that I could literally stay home and that team is so well trained, they wouldn't even notice I was gone.
Right.
So that's what my mission is. A year from today, I want to get to, and it's fun now because now I'm getting, because I do all these radio. This year you're my 5th interview this week. I did a TV interview that they're airing it right now, actually, on ABC in St. Louis. They're airing it 11 times
Nice.
over the weekend here. I did a radio interview with Bobby Rocks, the largest drive time show in DC. And then 3
Okay.
podcasters. We did the Dadvocate, the Slam the Gavel, and now you. But I just don't have time for all these interviews anymore. So the cool thing is I don't need to. I've got an Anthony Perez that's part of the team leadership. I've got a Daniel Martin, part of team leadership. I've got a Mehdi Kasem. And so now my goal is to elevate leaders that all of a sudden, these leaders are really coming on strong. And now
Right.
we've got a B team that's really, really scaling upwards. So I'm real excited. And to be honest, that's what I'm more proud of is the training and the development. Everybody needs to pick a niche. Some
Yeah.
people want to come in and they want to be everything. They want to train. They want to write the bills. They want to, file the
I
reports.
learned that does not work. You just
Oh,
get overwhelmed and burnt out when
exactly.
you
You
try to be
become,
everything.
you think you're an expert in everything, but by doing that, you're an expert in nothing. We need, when
Right.
a baseball team goes out on the field, they don't all run to the pitcher's mound. You need somebody in right field. You need somebody on third base. So I tell people, find your niche. My niche is teaching and training people and culture and strategy. And I don't mean to sound egotistical, but I've been doing this for 40 years at the highest levels. So I
Yeah.
think I am pretty well qualified to do that. But we have other people that are better than me at policy. We've got a Molly Olson. We got a Ron Henry. We got a George Peacecore. These guys are, a Brian Vandiver. I was just talking to, Brian wrote the Arkansas bill. So
Yeah.
we got some of the best policy people. So they're policy. Then we've got some people that are great on defense, things like this horrible Caden's Law and Peaky's Law and Ohm's Law. So, we've got a Holly Gager and people like
Well, I
that.
love what you're saying, Mark, because essentially what you're saying is you're meeting people where they're at and figuring out what they're good at and then encouraging them to, okay, utilize that talent, focus on that, because that's what I try to do. Like since I've been doing this podcast is I just try to meet people where they're at, especially if I see them doing something that is, bearing good fruit and then encourage them to go for that. Like my
Yeah,
brother
and then the
Kyle's
key is
brilliant
it's
with the
partnering
law.
and collaborating. If you're
Right.
a pitcher and the ball's hit to the third baseman, yeah, you're not going to grab it in front of them. No, that's their role. So if I get a legislator calling me saying, hey, Mark, we got this Cadence Law, we'd like some help. Immediately what I do, I call, Rael, I forget her last name. It starts with an L, LaPointe or LaFonte. But I call Rael or I call Holly and I immediately get them involved in the process because
Okay.
they're the experts on Cadence Law. I'm not. So let's involve them in the process, not It's the Mark Ludwig show. No, let's do that.
Yeah.
If I need a bill written, I don't need to be the bill writer. I've got a George P. Score. I've got a Brian Vandiver. I've got a Jeff Miller. I've got a Jeremy Roberts. They're my bill routers. If I need somebody on parental alienation, I've got a Wendy Perry. I've got a Danica Dockery. I've got a Cheryl Mefford. So the key is don't try and be everything. When something
Right.
comes in, don't fake it. Pull this person in and now let them take the lead, and you're helping and assisting that person. Because if you do that, then they'll help and assist you. So,
Right.
with them, if they need strategy in a state, they'll come to me and say, hey, Mark, I need strategy on fighting Caden's Law. I need strategy on a 50-50 bill. That's my expertise. That's why we collaborate and we partner and we work very, very, very well together because I stay in my lane.
Mark,
But
you're on fire today. You're on fire.
I know. I was realizing, no, I was supposed to be on a Zoom meeting 5 minutes ago. The funny thing is,
okay.
they probably don't even notice I'm gone yet.
Do you have time for a few more questions?
I could do like another. I really do need to get. So give me like 5 minutes, and I really do need to get on that other call.
Okay. Let me look at these and let me get one more question in for you real quick. Yeah. Okay.
I get so fired up. I
no, you're
rambling.
On fire today, man.
I'd be great at the
freaking love it.
filibuster.
Yeah. No, this is freaking beautiful. Okay. Okay, let me ask you this, okay? So, you've been opposed by both domestic violence advocacy groups and bar associations. So, can you articulate their motivations and financial interests, and how do you navigate the reality that some resistance to 50-50 legislation stems from legitimate ideological disagreements rather than financial incentives, if you even believe there is that?
And you hit the nail on the head. Like they always say, if there's a problem, track the money down. The Bar Association, even the best intentioned attorneys, their client is not the child. Their client is either the father or the mother, and no different than if somebody is a defense attorney for someone who's been accused of murder. If they know that person for sure really did murder them, they still have a fiduciary responsibility to their client to get the best deal.
Yeah.
So what happens is the attorney isn't trying to be unethical. They were hired by the father, so I'm getting the best deal for the father. And the way to do that, you create that adversarial relationship and you dig in and you fight them every way you can. Because if there's 50-50 in a state, there's no real need to fight. So you need that platform out there, that foundation of, hey, we got a muddy field for you, so I'm going to hose that sucker down because I want you as muddy as possible. So that's what they do. They don't want 50-50 because 50-50 leaves a dry field for you to play on. So they're sprinkling water all over to keep that field muddy so you can keep on fighting each other. So with them, it's billable hours because they know you'll give up on your car, you'll give up on your house, but you'll fight until the last death for the kids. So that's what they do. And then the domestic violence groups, now there's a distinction between the legitimate ones and the illegitimate ones. Legitimate ones, I have no problem working with. They truly, in their heart, most of them started because they had truly been abused.
Can you name, if you don't mind me, in your opinion, who are one or two of the legitimate ones?
Well, each state has their own. In Missouri, we've got the Missouri Domestic Violence Coalition that has, a handful of smaller ones, and each state has their own. But what happens is if a woman was truly abused, and it does happen, as we know, so we can't deny and say there is none that happens. But
this is the real world.
If it really does happen and a woman truly got, what beat out of her or something like that, and she truly wants to make a difference. So she'll start a home for women who were truly abused. Those are the people. My attitude is I want to look at what they're doing. Is it in their heart? Sort of like with a shared parenting community. The first thing I look at for an advocate that wants to join team leadership, I look at their Facebook page for the last 6 months. And if every post was about themselves and not a single post about their kids, my attitude is that's not somebody I want on my team. It's not in their heart.
Right.
So a true domestic violence group, they're going to have a home for women. They're going to have an outreach program. However, the big groups and the dangerous groups are the ones that they figured out there's Title IV money and to the millions and millions and millions of dollars. So if they can get their aunt and their neighbor and their best friend to form a LLC called all men are abusers or we're going to save the women of America, LLC,
Right.
they can
Yeah.
qualify for a $600,000 grant of Title IV money. And they each take
Yeah.
a 100-piece salary, but they have 200,000 left over. So they put billboards up and then they show up at every Senate and House hearing to say all men are bad. Now they've never done anything to
Right.
help all the women, but they sure make it sound like it's more prevalent than it is. Those are the
Well,
bad
they're
recruits.
hurting the
Sadly,
good women.
I'm sorry.
I was saying they're actually they're very counterproductive because what people don't realize, and this is just me connecting the bigger dots. I always try to tell people this. All this damage that's been done through the family courts and divorce courts the last several decades, not only has it obviously had more of an yes, we know it's had more of an impact on dads and the kids more than the moms, but it's actually had in some ways it's actually had just as much impact on the women's side because what's
Absolutely.
happening is men are to a point where men are a lot of men are now refusing to get married and have relationships, and so you have these quality women out there that are actually good quality women to now where they're struggling to find a mate because men, for their own safety, more and more are feeling like, look, because of the way the divorce courts and family courts operate, I can't take the risk of getting married or having a relationship. So
Definitely.
inevitably, yeah, so inevitably these good women suffer for it
Well, that's
too.
that's one thing I've been having. When I was at the White House, one thing I was talking to them about, and Kevin Roberts, who's the president of the Heritage Foundation, because one big thing they're looking at is declining birth rates in our country. Every society, if they get below a certain threshold, every single society has collapsed when their birth rate dropped too low. And I'm
Right.
telling them, hey, if you want to know why we have a declining birth rate, go sit in a family court, for 2 days and ask yourself, would you want to be a father again if you sat through that? So it is. But
Yeah.
the other important concern is what about the women who were truly abused? With all the
Right.
false allegations, now all of a sudden you don't know if that. I talked to a CPS worker in St. Louis one day off the record, and he told me, he's like, Mark, if I know there's a custody battle going on when I do a case investigation, 9 out of 10 of those are false allegations to get an upper hand in court. He said, the challenge for me, what about that one that really is being abused? And because I had 8 cases that day that were so blatantly false, I walk into the ninth case biased. And unfortunately, I mislook at some facts because I'm like, well, the last 8 were all allegations too. And all of a sudden, boop. And so that's the really sad thing is those phony
Yeah.
groups that are out there are really ruining it for the true people who are being abused.
Yes, they are. We got one out here called the YWCA, and they're all connected with the American Bar Association. And the stuff that I've dealt with from them has just been
Yeah, it's
crazy. So,
so,
yeah,
anyways,
yeah.
I do need to get hopping here, but I really do appreciate you having me on. If anybody's interested in finding out more, my Facebook page is a good one. The new National Council for Equal Shared Parenting. We have our Facebook page up. The website is going to launch on Thanksgiving night at ncesp.org. We're going to have a pretty big deal. I've got some legislators coming on. It's going to be kind of a fun little night that we're going to have, a 2-hour show. Or if you want information on how to be a part of the training that I do so that you can be the person in your state, it's stlmarkludwig.com is the website. Now I
It's
do
right there
plenty of
on the screen,
everyone's
guys.
like, well, why do you charge for this? I'll just tell you, there's not a person in the shared parenting community that has given more free material over 11 years. There are thousands and thousands of hours. That's not exaggeration of free material I've put out there. The
Right.
challenge is I challenge anybody to look at my travel schedule and how much it costs to go to these cities, which, I could have used that money to buy a better place than my little 600 square foot apartment with a hole in the wall. So, I do charge for that. It's $30 a month for the Legislative Leadership Development Program. 15 of that goes to the couple who designed the site and puts the actual videos and all that in the library. Out of my 15 a month, I try to make a dent in some of my travel. But my attitude is you're going to pay more than $30 a month for a gym membership or something. If you
Right.
truly want to, is it not worth the investment? And once again, another reason I do it, I want you to have skin in the game. If you're paying for the program, you're probably going to use it instead of just sign up for it and forget about it. So
Exactly.
find out
Yeah.
more at stlmarkludwig.com. I would love to have you a part of it, but I do require anybody going to DC does need to be a part of that legislative leadership development program because I need you to learn the playbook. I always tell people, you may know how to play football, But if you're going to play for a professional team, you need their playbook. You don't just run out
Right.
on the field. So the playbook is stlmarkludwig.com.
Yeah, you'll
But I
get
appreciate
smashed.
you, Codell, doing what you do. You are awesome, buddy.
Yeah, you too, Mark. You go to that next meeting. Appreciate you, brother, and I'll reach out to you soon because I definitely got to get you back on the show, my friend. You have a great weekend.
All right. Appreciate you. Bye bye.
Bye.